Coming into today, this morning, there was so much excitement, hype, energy was through the roof. New quarterback, new era of South Carolina football, a chance to redeem yourself from finishing 5-7 last year, a clean slate, a chance to get back on the right track and get back that momentum from the 2021 and 2022 seasons under head coach Shane Beamer. And for a little while on Saturday, it seemed like maybe the season was going to get off to the worst possible start. Playing Old Dominion, a Sun Belt school. You know, the Sun Belt has had their fair share of upsets over the years, and Old Dominion's no exception to that, beating Virginia Tech twice since 2018. It looked like for a time the Monarchs were going to go out here and pick up another win over a FBS group of or Power 4 team, but South Carolina, despite all of its flaws tonight, came out victorious, winning 23-19 in the season opener here at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday night. And before we get into any of the bad, because obviously there's a lot of bad, and I'm sure you guys want to hear about it, let's get into a few of the positives. First off, they got the win. That's the important part. You know, for a time, South Carolina was winning in this game, and then the Monarchs came back, were leading in the fourth quarter, and it took a great defensive performance to leg out a victory tonight. You got to give credit to South Carolina's defense. They were the story of the night, forcing 4 turnovers. 2 of them came right behind me here, deep in Old Dominion territory, and led to South Carolina being able to punch in the ball with 2 nice runs, one from Rocket Sanders a few yards out, and then Lenora Sellers in the fourth quarter, which would ultimately be the difference in a 23-19 victory. But that's about as far as the positives from this game go. You had flashes at times, but overall it was just a mess. And offensively speaking, I think that's where a lot of the issues reside. Lenora Sellers, like I said, making his first career start as a redshirt freshman for this program, taking over after Spencer Rattler did such a great job helming the quarterback position for the last 2 years for the Gamecocks. But tonight he looked like a freshman making his first career start, and it was not pretty. I mean, to put it into perspective, he threw for well under 200 yards, and I think he only completed maybe 9 to 10 passes, and he just looked like there were times where he had receivers open. We'll get to the receivers in a second, 'cause that's a highlight to talk about. But it just looked like him and the receivers were never really on the same page. And you see times where he's making throws and they're just off the mark. His best throw of the night, in my opinion, wasn't even a completion. He threw a real bomb. I don't even know how long it would have gone for, but it would have been a touchdown. He throws it over the back shoulder to Jared Brown, and Brown had it right in his breadbasket but dropped it. And that was just kind of the story of the night, was that Sellers and the receivers just couldn't get on the same page. Had some nice throws later in the game, but overall it was really just a mixed bag. And he ran 22 times for 102 yards with a touchdown. His longest run was 34 yards. And part of it was the fact that the pocket collapsed at times and he just took off and ran. And there's a lot to get into with this offense, but it does start with him. Not his best performance. Certainly could have been worse. But you got to move forward, and this is the starting point for him and how the rest of the season could go. Now, the run game was pretty good. Rocket Sanders, nice game. 24 carries, 92 yards on the ground. No pitch count, had a long run of 21 yards, looked very solid. The rest of the night offensively, the offensive line, I don't think it was as bad as it is made out to be. A lot of you guys are going to go out there and say this offensive line is piss poor, whatever the case might be. But it really was just the perimeter blocking, in my opinion, that was the issue. There were some gaps created at times that allowed Rocket Sanders and others like Lenora Sellers to run for nice gains, but the perimeter blocking on the outside, you weren't really able to do much. Some of those guys up front, Kamar Bell, Josiah Thompson, they had their struggles. This is a group that obviously is coming off a really bad season last year. I think they're going to get better from this game, but it was a start that they had some moments where they looked all right, and Shane Beamer did say that. With the receivers, Beamer was pretty blunt about it. I mean, they got to be able to block. That's the thing. And I think with the receivers, and the reason for there not being a good connection with Sellers out there tonight is that they're not creating separation. I think that's just number one. Number two, they're not blocking well enough. I think that's another thing that Beamer did point out and really just called out, honestly, for what it is. They just weren't blocking well enough, tight ends included. That's why you really didn't see many of the tight ends involved in the passing game tonight like you might have expected. But yeah, I mean, and then when these receivers had their opportunities, they dropped some passes. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster when you're not able to do what you can at receiver. And this is really not much of a surprise, because if you go back and hear what Dow Loggins had to say a few weeks ago, he said this is going to be a by committee type of product at receiver, and they don't have a true number one. That's basically what he said. And no one's been able to really separate themselves in that receiver room. So you see it reflected out here tonight when Jared Brown drops a good pass and he doesn't make any big plays in the receiving game. I mean, Dre Jacobs was your leading receiver, 2 catches for 59 yards, but it was really a disappointing night from the receivers, at least to me. They had some moments, like I said. I think everyone had their moments, but overall, just not a great night for the offense. But the defense, again, stole the show tonight. Dylan Stewart, phenomenal. Kyle Kennard, electric. O'Donnell Fortune had a pick late in the game to seal it. Jalen Kilgore had a nice interception off a tip pass that went off an Old Dominion receiver's hands and right into his with under 2 minutes to go, and that essentially sealed the game. Looking forward, South Carolina heads to Lexington next weekend to play Kentucky in what will be a massive SEC matchup. Every game in the SEC is huge, but this one specifically because these are two teams that, if you win this game next week, it's like, okay, you're starting off potentially 2-0. We don't know how Kentucky's looking tonight, but you're looking at it from the perspective that one of these teams could go 2-0, and that puts you on the right path to getting off to a good start to the year, but also looking towards bowl eligibility potentially. So that game kicks off at 3:30 Eastern time next week on ABC in Lexington. I will be there along with some of my colleagues over at GamecockCentral.com, so be sure to stay locked in for all that. I'll be going live on YouTube tomorrow, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well. I'll be breaking down a lot more from what I saw tonight and moving forward, and then it's on to Kentucky. So that's going to do it for all right now. Be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com, like I said. Until next time, I'm Jack Veltri.